If you missed it, yesterday was our coach Brenda's birthday. Happy birthday, Brenda.
Thank you.
Birthday.
Thank you.
We have a very light workout this week. It's just strides. So the idea is not so much to try to gain fitness the week of a race or time trial, but to just not get into such a rut that it's been 10 days since you did anything faster than easy running. You just want to like kind of, I think turn the recording on. Wait.
Yeah, I turn it on.
Okay, yeah. You don't need to like go out and do a whole workout, but you also don't want. I don't really know how to. This coach I like, Steve Magnus, talks about something he calls muscle tension, which is very unscientific, but it's just a term he uses. That you'll find that if you have not done any faster running in a while, it's harder to get spun up when it's time to go do a workout. So like like I do strides the day before a workout even, sometimes if I'm not lazy. So the week of a race, you don't want to do anything that's gonna like, or a time trial, like, or a virtual race like we're doing this week. You don't want to do anything that's gonna fatigue you too much. It's still mostly about how long has it been since that virtual mile? 5-6 weeks. You know, we've been going strong here. It's just about taking that step back, recovering, letting your body absorb the training so that you get faster. The recovery is a key to the training process. You never get faster if you don't take the time to recover. And that's what your taper really is. It's like recovering from the whole training cycle. And so obviously we have this little mini taper in here to allow us to perform our best this weekend. But you don't just want to be totally flat and you've just been jogging around for the whole week beforehand. So that's why we're just going to do a few strides this week. It's a very number for people. But, and again, those are just like, I linked an article in the email this week that even says something different than what I usually say. I think they say like 30-second surges or accelerations. It's not so much to get caught up in the details of it has to be 100 meters or it has to be 25 seconds or I have to hit this pace. It's more the overall, just that acceleration up to touch your top speed, come back down. Don't worry so much about like, it's not like you're trying to hit your splits in a workout. So it's just kind of by feel, you know, some days my strides end up being like, almost like their own workout, like hard accelerations, where at the end I might hit my like touch my 200 meter pace. So moving pretty good. Other times it's just like I'm kind of like just jogging slightly more briskly. You know what I mean? It just kind of depends on how I'm feeling and stuff. So it's just, if you need a guideline, try to touch the pace that you think you're going to try to hold this weekend. So like 5K pace or up to mile pace. But it's really just getting in a few reps of just reminding your body what it feels like to run fast with minimal effort. It's a good thing that we don't have a workout this week. I mean, it's not a good thing. You're gonna have to deal with it eventually because it's real hot. If you were listening, you know that was a good segue right there. Then if you listen to this early, you'll know it's probably the heat index is probably like up over 100 right now outside. You know, I mean, we're definitely in the yellow and potentially the orange zone on the charts. And running in the heat, obviously, as we all know, comes with its own challenges. I know a few weeks ago or about a month ago, Terry covered kind of how to run in the heat, about making sure you're hydrated. Hydration isn't something that happens. It is something that happens during your run, but for a regular weekday run that takes less than an hour, the fluids that you're taking in on that run, if you bring water with you, aren't really having a huge effect on what happens during that run. During your long runs, obviously hydrate early, hydrate often, with like an electrolyte drink especially, or a good way to get calories in. But it's more important to stay hydrated throughout the day. It's like, there's tons of tips about this. It's cliche. People are like, well, get a water bottle and just keep it at your desk and it reminds you to drink it, which is what I do. I have an Nalgene. But like, whatever strategy works for you, the most important thing is to come into your workout hydrated, not to try to chug 2 glasses of water and camel up right before the race, right before your run starts, not to try to not to try to like hydrate on the go, but to be well hydrated before you even start your run. So one of the big problems with running in the heat, sorry, I got kind of sidetracked by hydration there. There are a couple different like kind of like levels of what we might call like heat illness that you should be aware of. Especially if you have a job where you can't get out in the morning and you have to run in the evening, that's totally okay. You can run in the heat. It's not like a deal breaker. But first, at the very lowest level, I guess, you have heat cramps, which are pretty much what they sound like. They always say one of the symptoms of heat cramps is heavy sweating, but if it's 95 degrees, no matter what speed you're running, there's heavy sweating happening. So the symptom of heat cramps is cramping. That's just something that if that happens, and you feel like it's a result of the heat, instead of maybe it's something you've never had happen before, like some people cramp up fairly regularly on certain types of runs and stuff. But if it's new, then the thing to do is just stop, let it subside, and then you can continue. I wouldn't try to run through that, especially the rule is always if it's bad enough that it's affecting your running mechanics. So if your foot is hitting the ground differently than it would without the cramp, you must stop. Do not ever continue with a pain or injury that affects your running mechanics, because it's when you get out of that kind of mechanical groove that your body has been in for weeks, months, years, and you're subjecting your body to new forces and stresses from like different angles and stuff. That's when you really are at even higher risk of injury. So that's kind of like my red line, is if it's affecting your mechanics, you have to stop. The next level up is what's called heat exhaustion. So again, a symptom of heat exhaustion is heavy sweating. It's super useful. But beyond that, you will start to feel bad. Like if you start to feel a little bit faint, dizzy, lightheadedness, just any kind of like, it's gone beyond like, oh, okay, so sometimes you're running and you're like, oh, it's hot, and you're complaining to yourself, but you still feel fine. It's just unpleasant. You know what I mean? If you start to feel actually ill, it's very possible that is an onset of what we call heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion is in itself something that you can easily nip in the bud. If you try to run through it, that's when you kind of get into some real danger zones. The way to deal with heat exhaustion, if you start to feel yourself, like I said, any kind of lightheadedness or faintness is a big, or like dizziness, any kind of cognitive issue is like a big warning sign. And what you need to do is you have to stop. You have to get into a cool place, or at least a shaded place. Don't just go chugging water, not because it has really anything to do with various heat stresses, but because if you've been sweating profusely and your electrolyte balance is messed up and you chug like a gallon of water, you can mess with your electrolyte balance, and it could potentially be harmful. So it's not just like, oh, I have to rehydrate, I'm going to chug this gallon of water. Drink water at a regular pace, rehydrate, but do, anytime you feel any kind of like symptom beyond just like it's hot and I'd rather be inside in the air conditioning, you know what I mean? Do stop and at least assess how you're feeling, and please err on the side of caution, because as you try to go run through it, if you're like, well, turning in the heat is good for me, which it is, you're starting to really risk some much more serious symptoms like heat stroke, and that's when your core body temperature is going to start to rise. And at that point, if you start to feel like you're getting hotter, or you stop sweating, or your skin is like turning red, you're vomiting, you touch your forehead and it's obviously several degrees warmer, that's when you have to stop and you have to call 911. Not to like put the fear of God in you here, but if you experience heat stroke, like, it is potentially very dangerous. So my advice to you is always, I don't want to like scare anybody with this stuff. it's not going to be an issue if one, you're hydrated. Two, you just remember that you have to slow down. Like you just are slower in the heat, and it's the same thing as you're slower running up a hill or you're slower altitude. It's just a new stress on your body that is, you can to some degree acclimate to heat, but you're never going to fully acclimate. You're always going to be slower in the heat. So just don't worry so much about your pace and run by effort. And if you're just kind of jogging along, that's totally fine. But the biggest thing is just to make sure if you start to feel any kind of like illness or anything, you gotta stop and nip it in the bud. I should disclaim this by saying that I'm not a doctor, so like don't use any of this, you know what I mean? I'm not like giving you guys prescriptions or anything, but just in general knowledge. And it may be worth, I'll send out in the newsletter this week kind of a link to the CDC page for the levels of heat illness or heat stress, and it may help you to familiarize yourself with this. So
Can I say something real quick? Just
yes.
I've had it where I've run with people who actually, they were the ones who were suffering from not necessarily heat stroke, but they were dehydrated. So don't just watch yourself, but also watch the people that you run with. If they stop sweating, they start getting goosebumps on their arms or legs, might be time to...
Charlie, and something else, since we're running alone, since a lot of people are running alone, like I run by myself and nobody else, I always make sure I have my phone, and I wear one of those little bands around my ankle with my name on it and my phone number and my, who you would call to help me if you found me laying on the side of the road.
Yep. If you have never heard of this company, Road ID,
that's what I have.
They make like bracelets and shoe tags. I like the dog tag one, so I can wear it all the time without having like a little rubber bracelet or whatever. Right. And it has my name, my age or my birth date, my mom's phone number, my brother's phone number, my blood type, B positive, thrilling, one of the most boring blood types. I don't have any allergies, and that way if I ever get hit by a truck or something, they know who to call. Right. So I actually think it's a good idea to have something like this, especially
if you're solo. Yeah.
If you're running solo, which I run solo a lot, and I ride my bike around, and I'm just, you know what I mean, generally getting hit by cars and stuff all the time. So it's not a bad idea. Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is what you should do this weekend in your time trial. I assume everybody is signed up for our virtual race. The link should be in our Facebook group. It should have been in at least the last week's newsletter email on Thursday or Friday. We'll be sending it out again. You don't actually have to sign up in advance. You can literally sign up on Sunday and submit your time immediately after. It's not like sign up closes and then the virtual race starts. So to run, a lot of you know that the 5K is my favorite distance. I will run longer races, but I don't. It takes so long to run a half marathon. Whereas I'm more of a, suffer badly but get it over with quickly person. But the 5K is fun if you like to push yourself. I guess my advice would be, everybody it has another 5K. Some people that are doing the level 1 plan are doing a mile this weekend. My advice in the mile is to go out as fast as you can. Go out a little bit faster than you think you can hold for a mile and try to hang on, or try to beat your last time. The 5K, we do have another 5K virtual race the second weekend in August. So you're going to get like a little do-over. So if it were me, knowing that I had kind of a backup race, I would probably be inclined, personally, you might think like, well, I'll take it easy and try to beat it next time. I personally would be inclined to go as hard as I can this one and see what happens. The thing is, if you don't ever push yourself and maybe reach outside your comfort zone a little bit, you're never really going to know what you're actually capable of. But the advice I always give is that the first mile of a 5K should feel unpleasant. I mean, you should get out of the gate pretty fast. Then the second mile, you should be, the second mile is probably the hardest mile, or it is for me. You are really suffering, but you're still a little ways away from the end. But you shouldn't be struggling. You should be able to maintain that pace that you did through the first mile. You're not like ready to fade off of that yet. The third mile is the mile where that pace starts to become difficult, to the point where you are thinking, oh God, I can't hold this, I have to stop, blah, blah. Here's the thing. At that point, for almost everybody, you have at most 12 minutes to go, probably 10, some people 7 or 8. So at that point, it's just a matter of like getting in your mental game and saying like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, I know how fast I'm running. If I'm running an 8-minute mile and I've got 1.1 miles to go, okay, I got about 9 minutes to go. I've got 8 minutes to go. Hang on for, it's just, the strategy is to put yourself into an unpleasant place, and then kind of, it just takes like a mental effort. I think that it's good to have, one of the reasons I like the 5K is because you can run one and then run another one 2 weeks later, and then run another one 2 weeks later. So you know what I mean? Like, you can really, it's not like a marathon where you have been training for it for 4 months and you're now ready. And if you get out too fast and mess it up, you're done. You know what I mean? That's it. Like, you have to go through another training cycle. You can try run another one 4 weeks later or something, but it's risky and you may not perform as well and blah, blah, blah. So I would recommend pushing yourself. That is my recommendation, is to get out a little bit faster than you think you can do, and try to hang on. I'm going to send out an article with some tips with our Thursday newsletter, but I will tell you one really interesting thing that I've learned recently is that, so self-talk, talking to yourself, being like, you got, or I've got this, I can do this, blah, blah, really works. And it actually works equally well if it's positive self-talk, like, I'm doing great, or if it's negative self-talk, like, not necessarily like, I feel terrible, but like, oh, I can't believe I signed up for this, blah, blah. But the real key is not to say I. This is proven scientific research. If you talk to yourself in the second person, the self-talk works better. So don't say like, I'm crushing it. Say you're crushing it to yourself. I think that if I were to speculate about like the way this works psychologically, it'd be like that you're kind of taking yourself outside of your own experience, you know what I mean? And allowing yourself to look at yourself from the third person. But it's just one of those weird things, like psychological effects, that is 100% true. So if you're going to do self-talk, talk to yourself in the second person. I always say like, you signed up for this, you know what I mean? Like, or you've been training for this, like, don't slip up now, etc. So that's one just useful fact, I guess, that I learned, that is just, I don't know why that is. I'm not a psychologist, but I do think it's interesting.
That's good.
Yeah. Anybody else? You guys have been running, any of our other coaches, anybody else have any tips on how to pace yourselves during a 5K?
Well, I don't have any tips, but the thing I worry about by running really hard for a 5K is doing it virtually, like we're doing it. There's not any motivation except what you say to yourself, like what you said. I think that's going to be hard.
I think that the virtual racing and the time trials are mentally tough. Yeah. Yes. I think that one thing to think about is that keep a separate, if you fall off your 5K PR pace in a race, don't say like, oh, well, this is going terribly. You really have to have two separate sets. It'd be like having your 10K PR on the trails and your 10K PR on the roads, because you're not, under ideal conditions, you run faster in a race with other people. That's like statistically true. So yeah, it's tough. doing all these virtual races, pacing Connor. So she gets a little advantage because I have a good idea of how fast she can run. So she just gets to latch on and turn her brain off. But yeah, it's a psychological exercise for sure.
I would say just, stay safe too. I mean, it's good to plan your route a little bit, but keep in mind that cars aren't stopping for you. You got to be paying attention to your surroundings. If you're you're thinking about, how fast you're going and trying to, get this certain time, you got to make sure you're still paying attention, like going through stop signs and red lights. And that's what's tricky about this virtual racing. That's for sure.
Exactly.
But yeah, not to mention the fact that it looks like it's going to be 93 on Saturday. So, certainly pay attention to how you feel and probably slow down. Don't expect to get your PR. It's just, trying to set a little bit of a new standard that you can judge your fitness by and give you some experience. We got a random cat that's on my porch right here. I don't know where this cat came from. Speaking of cats, maybe it needs a home. I don't know, but that's kind of odd. I haven't seen a cat come up on my porch like this before.
Is it a baby?
I don't know.
I mean, we
Just
will
said hi and left.
we will definitely be getting out. There's a reason that in every race always starts in the morning, but especially in the summer, races starting at like 7 a.m. I can tell you that we will definitely be getting out the door. I mean, it's already going to be like in the low 70s at 7, but we're not going to wait until late morning to start this thing. That's another piece of advice, I guess.
I'd say, yeah, the earlier the better, less cars, cooler for sure. I think, and I was mentioned going back to the running the heat thing too, is, always do your best to prepare ahead of time as well, so you can prevent, those types of things from happening. Staying hydrated, wearing, light, cool clothing, of course, exercising or running early in the day. There's a calculator too. I think when we talked about slowing down, I mentioned that last week, I believe, on Runners Connect. You just enter the dew point and the temperature and your goal pace, and then it kind of gives you an idea of how much to adjust by, whether it's a race or an easy run. So that's a pretty good calculator too. So for instance, right now, if I were to try to race, it's telling me to slow down by 20 seconds. I mean, there's some general, calculations out there, like every 5 degrees above 60 or something, slow down by, 10, 20 seconds. But, so you just use your best judgment.
And, something else, it's my eye doctor who just told me at my eye checkup to make sure I'm wearing sunglasses because that sun causes cataracts. And he said to make sure you wear a visor to protect your skin, and sunscreen.
Yeah, I was going to say sunscreen too. That can help, keep your skin cooler and so that, blood's not all going to your skin as well. I agree with that. Yeah. Visors, sunglasses.
Yeah, the cataracts really kind of freaked me out. I don't want to get
Headbands if you want to keep the sweat out of your eyes.
Right.
Yeah, so it says for me that if I was going to run a 5K right now, I would want to cut back by 15 seconds per mile. So, and that is a lot in a 5K. I mean, that's like going on, almost a minute, which is a long time in a race. So don't, I want you to push yourself, but I wish I had better advice for you than to run by feel, but that's what I got.
That's good though. As hot as it is, if you just run by feel, you're being safer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Has anybody signed up for the Hilltop USA 5K?
No, I haven't yet, but
Yeah. I know we gave some entries away. You know what? I'm just going to tell you guys that we do have prizes this week, obviously after the virtual race. I think we're going to have some small goods, but the two big ones are entries to the Cap City and Emerald City virtual races, whatever distance you want. So those will be the two things that are in the drawing if after you complete the race. So even if you've already if you had a Cap City entry and you deferred it after they went virtual, same thing with Emerald City. You can just jump in and run this one. So, and that is just the whole works. Obviously entering your time, but all the swag bag and everything else. So that's our two big prizes this week. Wanted to get those out to you pretty quickly so that we could, because they're coming up in like 2 months. So
Also, I think you have to defer to next year on Cap City by today too. I don't know if everyone did that. I think it's
yeah. So if you have not deferred your Cap City, yeah, do it right now. Unless you want to do the virtual race, in which case don't do it right now.
Sounds good.
Does anybody else have any questions for me? Or for any coach or for anybody?
That's like that's like signing up for a race. That's $0. That's kind of nice. I do like that. So, but what is the West Side? Do you know how much that one is?
It's $25. They fund their entire year of supplies and events and everything else from this race. So, I haven't actually run it, but from what I understand, it's most years it's good, it's fun. But yeah, this is their main thing. Yeah, Katie says it's good. Cool. So if nobody else has anything, remember you can always email me or any of the coaches. And have fun out there this weekend. Like I said, I love 5Ks. As soon as there is a 5K that is happening after COVID, I'm literally just going to sign up for like the very first one. I don't care. They could charge me $200. Well, maybe not. But yeah. So have fun, and we'll reconvene next week and talk about how it went.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you, Charlie.
Have a good night, everybody.
Everybody have a good night.
It works. Yeah.